Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a secure login system using the Trongate framework. We are not using any code generators here, nothing like that, no module market or anything. We're going to be doing the whole thing manually. Now, if you're coming in cold, this is, I suppose, part 2, but don't worry, I've created some code for you. It's on GitHub, and if you want to get started quickly, I do have a GitHub repo, and I'll leave a link in the description just for anyone who missed the first video. However, in this one, we're going to be looking at building a login system. We'll add a little remember me checkbox, and I'll show you how all of that stuff works. And then we're going to safely and securely log users in, and we're going to be using a token system that comes with the Trongate framework. So, enough waffling, and here we go. Alright folks, now last time we built this create account feature. Let's get straight to the action and we'll build our members login page. So I'll start this one off by opening up the members module. We're going into the members controller file. Find somewhere that makes you feel good, maybe here, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to say function login. Now let's say data view file is member underscore login. Now you can have any name that you like. That's the one I'm going to go with though, because it seems to make sense. And then I'm going to call upon a template. We'll be using the public template and passing in the data. Alright, now let's make this view file here. It's inside the members module. We're going into views. It's a new file, memberlogin.php. There we go. Now, let's be a little bit fancier this time, shall we? Let's have a little container with an H1, and we'll say member login, and then we'll have a paragraph that says, please enter your username and password, then hit submit. Okay? Now, let's just save that and refresh. There we go. So the container just brings things in a little bit. And in fact, you can even add on, well, I'll show you in just a second. Let me go straight to the form actually. If I go echo form, open, let's have this form going to members /submit login. Now, before we forget, let's do a form close here. Okay, and we'll close off the PHP. Now, straight to the action, let's say echo form label. So we're going to have username as the form label. Then we're going to say form input. So we want a name of username. That's the form field name. Then we're going to have a value of, and I'm going to chuck in $username. We're going to have the posted username appear here. Now, super quick, let's jump over to members, and here we'll say data username is post username. Simple as that, okay? So that means that our form field is going to have the value that was posted, and if they don't have anything posted even, it'll just be empty, okay? Finally, we're going to pass in an array of attributes here. Now, I'm going to do this way. I'll say attribute, and I'll say placeholder equals enter your username here. And I'll have another one just for this tutorial that says autocomplete is off. Now, you may not want to have this for your website. I'm just doing this for this YouTube tutorial, okay? So let's pass in attribute, save, refresh, and there we go. All right. Now, do you remember a minute ago I did the container and I went, oh, and we can do it, and I stuttered? The reason is because I wanted you to see this form field going right across the page. Now, I am zoomed in a little bit here, but nevertheless, I wish my lips would work. Nevertheless, you can see that this is quite wide. Now, we can add another class onto this, such as container -xs, save it. And as you can see, it makes it just a little bit more narrow. And there's nothing fancy going on, by the way. This is just a little class, a CSS class that comes with the framework, and there it is. It just restricts the width, no big deal. So you don't need to do this, but I think it just makes it look a little bit more nice, don't you think? Alright, so let's do the other form field. We're going to echo form, label, this one's password. And I'm going to echo form password this time. Now the name of this form field is password. The value is always going to be empty. And again, we'll pass in an array of attributes. Now just to confuse you, I'll do this the other way. So it's going to be array, I'll say placeholder is assigned to enter your password here. Alright, nice. So if we save and refresh, we've now got this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little div and I'm going to close it off. And then in here, I'm going to add a checkbox. Now if I take you to the documentation, we do have a form helper with this framework. And if you have a close look, you'll see that we've got a thing called form checkbox. And it can take a whole bunch of different things. But we're going to make life easy. We're going to just say form checkbox, remember. And if you look closely, everything else here is optional. So believe it or not, this will be fine. But after the checkbox, let's just echo, how about remember me? Save and go back. Refresh, and there we go. Okay. Now, let's do a form submit button. So I'm going to echo form submit. It's going to have a name of submit and a value of submit. Looks pretty cool. And finally, I'm going to do a link that takes users back to the home page. So I'll use the anchor function. If someone clicks on this, it will take them to the base URL. Now this is a constant that's available throughout the lifespan of the app, if you know what I mean. If I take you to config.php, here's our base URL, okay? So when they click on that, it's going to take us to the home page, and we're going to have the text saying cancel. Let's save, refresh, there we go. Now, if you want this cancel link to be a button, you can pass in a third argument. It's going to be an array with a class assigned to button. And as easy as that, we've now just turned the cancel link into a button. And if you want it to be an alternative color from the submit button, we can just add in a class of alt. Save and refresh, and there we go. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. And do remember, folks, it's perfectly okay to stack classes one on top of another like we've done here and like we've done up here. You can do as many as you want, whatever. Hello. Provided you have those classes defined somewhere, you can absolutely do that, okay? So, that's our form. Congratulations. Now, when they submit this form, you can see that it's going to members/submit login. So let's go back to the members controller file, and we're going to go and build a little method called submit login. Now let's go straight into a validation situation. So we're going to say this, we'll call upon the validation helper, set rules, and we're going to check this username here. Now the username has a name of username, and it has a label of username. Now, of course, we want to make sure that this has been submitted, so we can say required, but this is, I think, where we should really get into the business of logging someone in. So let's do a custom callback. We'll say callback underscore. Now, do we have callback so far? We've got username unique. So let's call this one callback How about something like login check? You can call it anything you want, as long as it starts with callback underscore. I'll go with login check, okay? So that's going to be that. Let's do one for the password. We'll say this, validation helper, set rules. So the name of password, and it has a label of password. And with this one, I'll just say required. Now I'm going to have all of the business of checking passwords and everything handled by this custom callback function that we're about to build. All right, so let's do this right now. We'll head downstairs. I like to have these things downstairs. I don't know why. Just a little convention that I invented, you know. So I'm going to say function login check. Now, this is going to accept our username by default. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure this username exists on the members table. Okay, so we can say member object is this, calling upon the model. I'm going to say get one where username is the username, and that's from the members table. Now, when you're doing, I mean, it's tempting to say if the member object is false. It's very tempting to say we do not have a username that matches this on the database table. But for a login system, I don't think we should be so helpful. Let's make a default error message right at the start of this function or this method. We'll say error message equals your username and / or password was not correct. Now that's a far better error message. That really lets them know that, well, something wasn't right, but we're not going to give them any more help than that. So if the username does not exist on the database table, in other words, the member object is false, we are simply going to return our default error message, and that would be the end of the road. Now, on the other hand, if they do have a record on the database table, well, now we can check to see if the password is valid. So I'm going to say here, password is post password. Okay, so that's going to give us the posted password here. And then you may recall from the last video, we had a thing that we took from the website, or from the Trongate administrators module, called verify hash. Do you see this here? Verify hash. And it's actually just calling upon an inbuilt PHP function called password verify. You can use that line if you want as well. That's absolutely fine. So in any event, I'll just go with this. And so we're going to say, right, the stored password. Now remember, our password is stored on the database. It's all scrambled up. Do you see it? See how it's all jumbled up? So the stored password is member object that we fetched from the database, calling upon password. All right, so that's the two things. Now, let's say is password valid equals, and we're going to call upon verify hash. So the names that we pass in are going to be password. So that's the one that was posted. And then the jumbled up one, I've called it stored password. And remember, this returns true or false. So if is password valid is equivalent to true, congratulations, you are valid. We're just going to say return true. Otherwise, we're going to return the error message. It's as simple as that. Okay, so that's all of our validation for logging in. Absolutely handled, and well done you. So, when we perform this validation, it's going to give us a result. I'm going to say result is this. Validation helper calling upon run. And remember, that always returns true or false. If the result is equivalent to false, then we are going to present the login page again. And that is, of course, the login method up here. So, if we fail validation, we're going to say this. Let's load up login and let's go to that member login form. And right up here, we'll just add in some validation errors. There we go. Now, if the validation is successful, so they've now entered a correct username, the password's good, everything is fantastic, well now, I'm going to do a little else statement here. It makes me feel good. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to call upon a function called in you go. All right, in you go. In you go. Now, in you go can accept a couple of values. So we could pass in, for example, the username. So we could say username is post username. And we could also, you may remember, that we had a little checkbox here. And we called this remember. So let's just say remember equals post remember. Okay? So when we invoke in you go, which is going to really log them in and perhaps send them to a private page, we can pass in our username and we can pass in this remember value. Now, if remember's not available, it will be an empty string, and that's all understood. Now, let's start on this in you go thing. So function underscore in you go with username and remember. And by the way, this underscore at the start of the function or method name, that underscore means that this cannot be invoked via the URL. So nobody can go to members / in you go and have the thing being invoked, okay? So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to just echo you can now go in and your username is username. And let's just do a little BR and we'll say and remember value is, and I think I'm going to do var dump remember. I just really want people to see how this works, okay? So, shall we dance? Yes, we shall. If we leave this empty, there's our validation errors. If we add in, let's say, 1 or 2 things and submit, there's the username populated. That's fantastic. Now I'm going to enter a wrong password and submit. There we go. Now I'm going to enter a correct password. I'll do that and I'll just submit. And there you go. Now you can see that remember, which we did not tick, is coming in as a string. But if we go back and we'll try this again. This time I'm going to tick remember me. And look at this. It's saying it's a string, but this time it's a string with a value of 1. So what we could do is we could say remember, perhaps up here, we could say that remember is an integer of post remember. This should be a bit more robust. So let me just go back again. We're going to fill in the details. This time we have remember ticked. Now you can see that remember is an integer of 1. But if we don't have remember ticked, it's an integer of 0. Now I like that. I think that gives us a whole lot more clarity. So now, finally, we are in the business of logging this person in. Now the first thing that we have to do is get the Trongate user ID for this user. Remember folks, the user ID, the Trongate user ID is critical because it's going to give us access to the token system, and also remember that the username is entirely unique. So we can say member object is this, model, get one where, username is the username from members, and then we can say Trongate user ID is member object calling upon Trongate user ID. And remember folks, we do have in our members table a column by the name of Trongate user ID. So we've now got the Trongate user ID. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a Trongate token using the Trongate tokens module. This comes with the framework. So we're going to say this. Let's call upon a module. It's going to be Trongate tokens. And then let me just show you Trongate tokens very, very quickly. Now, there's a really high probability that your code will look different. Do not worry about it. We are V1 forever. It's fine. But you should have a method called generate token, and this accepts an array. And this array should contain the Trongate user ID, and you can add in some other things as well. All right, but for the moment, let's say Trongate token data. Now, again, I'm looking at Trongate tokens. It's expecting a user ID. Even if your syntax here is a little bit different, this will be how it works. So Trongate token data user ID equals the Trongate user ID. Now, you can set expiry dates and things like that. We're not going to do that just yet. Instead, we're going to simply say this Trongate tokens and then generate token, passing in the Trongate token data. And that right there is going to generate a token for us. However, let's go a little bit further. Let's say if remember is equivalent to 1, well, that means that we should remember this user. They want to be logged in for a long time, okay? So if you have a look at Trongate tokens here, you'll see that there's a thing called set cookie. So I'm going to say Trongate token data set cookie equals true. So if the user has said remember me, we're going to give them a cookie. And just to show you how this works, if we don't give them a cookie, we're going to give them a session token, which doesn't last as long, okay? So that's really how it works. All right, so we give them a token, and then we can now send the user to the private members area. So I'm going to just redirect to members, and there you go. So back over here, and let's just do the wrong details. There we go. Now I'm going to do the correct details, and I'll do remember me, submit, and look at that, we are now on the members area. Alright, so well done if you followed along with that. I know it was another long video, but this stuff is kind of detailed and it's worth doing it correctly, and well done indeed. Now, those of you with an eagle eye may have noticed that even though we have a secure login system, our members area is still wide open. Anyone can just go to that page and see all of those secrets. So join me in the next video where we'll make the members area secure, and more than that, I'll show you the nuts and bolts of how this authorization and authentication system works with the Trongate framework. I'll see you then.